Hey everybody, today I'm going to be doing a video that's a little different. I have no idea how this conversation will go with myself, but I felt like it was important for me to talk about. Okay, many of you might know that I am challenging myself to read through the Qur'an, or at least start reading through the Qur'an this year. I think while I am personally a Christian, I think it's really important to understand other people's faiths, and for some reason I just hadn't. I'd heard little bits and pieces of it, probably very much out of context, just like somebody might do with the Bible. But I just didn't feel comfortable with that as a reality anymore. I don't think that's appropriate. I think it was important to kind of dip my toe into other sacred texts to understand better. Anyway, as one who is a nerd by nature might do, I decided to start by getting a couple of intro books to kind of give me a little bit more perspective. And so I went to the library and was just perusing the religion section. And I found these two little volumes and thought, oh, these are very non-threatening. They're very tiny. I like that. I'm going to go ahead and pick them up. So the first one is How to Read the Quran by Mona Siddiqui. And then this one is Islam, An Introduction to Religion, Culture, and History by James A. Beverly. Now, the first thing I probably should have done was look at the author. James A. Beverly does not sound like a very Muslim name. Now, I could be totally off base there, but I'm not. So anyway, so I started off by reading through this book because I thought, oh, that looks more legit. That's honestly probably what I thought. So I picked this up and was reading through it. Now, this one is very different than what I'm used to. There's a lot more bits out of the Quran in here that already was like, oh my gosh, I'm a little intimidated to pick it up, but I'm just going to do it. Even just looking at the chapter and verses is very different than, it was the same on how the Bible does it. It's just they put a Q before things. But it just kind of was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So anyway, I started looking through here. Now I did look at the intro to see, okay, this person has published in the areas of classical Islamic law and Muslim theology. And she is a professor of Islamic studies and public understanding at the University of Glasgow. So, okay, so she's got some street cred. So I kind of read through this. I got, I think, a decent amount of understanding about it. Just the idea of Jesus as being a prophet. I'd kind of already understood that, but I hadn't really understood exactly how they felt about the Trinity and how that was different. But there are a little bit more connections than I thought there. Okay, so then I pick up this one, the Islam one, and I start reading through this. This one's a lot easier for me to get through. And I'm thinking, man, was this just written differently? Like better? No, this is what I'm used to. Then I look, and I should have again done this first. I looked through the intro and realized that this particular person, James A. Beverly, is a professor at a very conservative Christian college. And while he is a professor in world religions, I should have taken that into consideration, and I hadn't even thought about looking up the university and kind of what their bent was. So that's the first thing I should have done differently. So I'm reading through it, and there's certain things in here that made sense. I liked that they had all the dates about things that were important in the Islamic faith. I liked how they broke things up. It was easy for me to understand that way with Jesus, Muhammad, those kinds of things. I like that he talks about how Muslims are not a violent faith. I think that's important. But again, the wheels start turning here, and I'm thinking, why would someone come at writing about their religion by saying from the get-go it is not a violent faith, unless that was the perception they were already coming from first. When people talk about Christianity, they don't start off by saying generally that this is not a violent faith. Now, there's plenty of violence in the Bible, and I think one could even make the argument that Christianity is a very violent faith. But that's not where people start. So that's when I started kind of second guessing this particular author and what he was saying. It started to kind of itch under my skin a little bit. So then I start kind of perusing this a little bit more. Then I get to a huge section on Palestine and jihad and terrorism, and September 11th is a whole chapter in itself. Again, I'm wanting to know about Islamic beliefs and kind of where the connecting parts of our faith are. I'm not wanting to I guess it is important to understand how that might have affected people in their faith, but I don't think it necessarily warrants a whole chapter to talk. And with the title, the way the title hits you is just like, oh. So there were several bits in here that it just hit you like, oh, that's not how I think Muslim people are. It might have been how several, I don't know. And I don't even remember necessarily how I viewed Muslim people growing up. I was in college when September 11th hit. I didn't think of it as all the people of this faith think this way. That was not part of my understanding. So what I am trying to say, basically, I'm not doing this well, maybe at all. When you are deciding to understand people of different beliefs than yourself, and you pick up guides that kind of help you understand those connecting points, because I do think it is important to read from different perspectives to understand, but I also think it's important to question where the author is coming from when you're reading it, especially when it is an author who is trying to understand and explain a faith or a belief that is not their own. This is why own voices, I think, is so important, because they're going to address issues and people differently than somebody who is of that faith and persuasion. And I don't even remember if they said that Mona is Muslim or not. I don't necessarily know if it's just very frustrating to me how this was portrayed in this book. So anyway, I finished reading the book. I think I gained some insight, but it wasn't necessarily insight on strictly on Muslims. I gained a lot of insight as to how people still view it and how people still want to write about people of other faiths that they don't understand. Or I guess he probably does understand some of it. Yeah. The author did live in places with people of the Muslim faith, and he wasn't very judgmental about certain things. But the way he talked about, well, they're misinformed on this, or if one is finding connecting points, they should be aware that this is not where they're coming from, and you might need to educate them in certain ways. That really bugged me. As a Christian, I do not think that I have all of the truth on everything. I do not think I have all of the answers. I have chosen to follow Christian faith because Jesus for me felt like a good example of what I want my life to be like. But I don't think that somebody else who has a different understanding of God is misunderstanding the truth. So anyway, I don't exactly know what I wanted you to get out from this book, other than if you are choosing to try and understand someone, please look at it from different perspectives, and please understand where those perspectives come from, and feel free to question how things are written. Even if you might think one part of a book is good, make sure that you're challenging it and balancing it with other things. So I was glad I picked up 2 books. How is that for a conclusion? And I look forward to starting reading the Qur'an. If you are a Muslim and you have more resources, podcasts, books, suggestions on reading the Qur'an better and understanding, I really am genuinely interested. Hopefully this did not offend anyone. Well, you know what? Screw that. Hopefully this made you think. Hopefully it made you think. I would love to hear your comments down below. And if I lose subscribers over this, peace and peace and love. Talk to you all later. Bye.